For 400 years, servicemen and women have fought to carve out and defend freedom and the civilization we know as America. This series, On a Moment in Time, is devoted to the memory of those warriors whose sacrifice represents, in the words of Lincoln at Gettysburg, the last full measure.
A Moment in Time with Dan Roberts.
In the closing days of the Vietnam War, with the North Vietnamese literally at the gates of Saigon, the United States rescued thousands of Vietnamese orphans from harm's way. 2 years after the ceasefire agreement between the U.S. and North Vietnam, the latter began its final assault on the South. In the midst of this chaos, many service organizations began begging the American government to help evacuate thousands of orphans from their facilities in Vietnam. Of particular concern were the offspring fathered by and left behind by American and European soldiers. These Nui Lai, or mixed-race children, would have been particularly imperiled under the regime of the victorious and rather puritanical North Vietnamese. In early April 1975, President Gerald R. Ford authorized Operation Babylift, an attempt to fly thousands of orphans out of Vietnam. On April 3rd, the flights began, and one of the first flights ended in tragedy. An Air Force C-5A Galaxy with 300 passengers, children and caregivers, lifted off from Tan Son Nhut Airport, had just reached 23,000 feet when an explosion blew off the rear doors of the giant craft. Through skilled flying, the pilots turned the plane back and brought it down about 2 miles from the airport. More than half the passengers died, and many of the 170 or so survivors were injured. Almost without interruption, however, the flights continued, and before Operation Babylift was discontinued because of enemy fire later that month, 2,700 children had been flown out to the United States, with an additional 1,300 children flown to Canada, Australia, and Europe. Most Americans supported this effort, although many questioned the motives, ethics, and process involved. At the University of Richmond, I'm Dan Roberts.